everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. My name is Hitzir.
I'm Isa.
And for this episode, we'll be delving into our favorite, shall we say, series of 2020.
Yeah.
Shows, shall we say. Lah. The reason I say series and not TV shows is because, I guess with the advent of streaming and shows on obscure networks like Dropout, which we'll be talking about later,
hmm
or what is a web series, what is an anthology of films, what is nobody can decide lah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, right, like all the stuff we were talking about here are strung together as series lah. So we're talking about it as series. Or for my part, I'll be talking about two shows that I didn't intend it this way,
yeah.
but they have coincidentally are covering the Afro Caribbean community in London.
hmm
It's unusual. I didn't plan for it to be like that. It just happened to be like that. The first show I'll be talking about is Michaela Coel's "I May Destroy You,"
hmm
which is almost autobiographical story about a young writer whose life is upturned by sexual assault. It is a story about sexual content. Sexual assault and consent and dating in the age of social media, which
hmm
makes the lines very blurry.
Yeah.
And it's a mini series that's out on BBC One and on HBO as well. On the flip side, I'll also be talking about Steve McQueen's anthology called Small Acts. I'm not talking about the Steve McQueen of old, the old movies. I'm talking about the black Steve McQueen. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about because he is famous in his own right. He has directed and written such films like 12 Years a Slave, Widows,
hmm
big movies. So he's come back with what has been confusingly labeled as a TV show or an anthology of 5 films. BBC has been advertising it as a TV show and presenting it as a TV show because it's one episode a week kind of thing, traditional model.
Yep.
Whereas Amazon has kind of dropped it as an anthology of 5 films. Um, Basically because like each episode's runtime is between 70 minutes to 2 hours, so those are more consistent with feature films. But as some other people have pointed out, other episodes, say like Game of Thrones or Black Mirror, have consistently, gone above 90 minutes. So who's to say what is an episode length and what is a
That is
feature film,
true.
right?
That is true.
Yeah. What about your side, Isa? What are you going to be pimping this week?
So basically, I'm going to be talking about a YouTube channel. Well, I guess you could call it as it is serialized in its own way. So we're going to be talking about Adam Savage's Tested.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Savage of MythBusters fame,
Yeah.
also maker and kind of like a modern day Renaissance man. A
Mm.
whole slew of skills and talents and ideas. One of my heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just going to be talking about, kind of the things that Tested covers and how I personally have spent a lot of time watching the stuff on Tested, and how that's
Yep.
kind of helped me through the year, really, right? Just kind of
Mm.
tapping into the maker slash creative, working with your hands side of things,
Mm.
and all that energy. And on the
Yes.
other hand, another thing that I've been recommending to hits for a while is we're going to be talking about Fantasy High. Well, not strictly Fantasy High, which is on Dimension 20. You can find some
Yep.
of their stuff on YouTube, but it is a live D&D. Well, it's a recorded D&D session
Mm.
by the great folks at College Humor, right? So you can
Yeah.
find all their stuff on Dropout TV.
Dropout TV is a streaming service that's owned by College Humor. Yeah.
That's right. So we'll get more into that, but like I've spent a lot of time just kind of following these characters and their Dungeons and Dragons lives. It's been
Mm-hmm.
such a good kind of like romp, right? Always been fascinated with Dungeons and Dragons and how it's played and how it's affected kind of people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so interesting to kind of see the confluence of that of the game, right? Meeting media as it is today.
Definitely, there have been a slew of Dungeons and Dragon, I guess, gameplay
Yep.
stuff out there. Series that's available on podcast platforms, and Twitch and things like that. But Dimension 20 definitely one of the best of the D&D gameplay genre. I guess that's a new genre
Yeah,
out there.
yeah. Gameplay genre, which I mean, like it definitely fits into what we do in genre equality, all in all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's not something that mainstream viewers are going to be necessarily exposed to. But I
Yep.
will tell you from just kind of devouring everything they've been doing in Dimension 20 and even at Critical Role,
Mhm.
that it's no less uh I mean the quality is there, right? Like it's as compelling as it gets, and that so many of it is done on the fly and improvised at the same time
Y-
makes it for some really really entertaining TV. Well, if we can call it
Yes.
TV. But yeah, so we'll be jumping into that as well. But first of all, let's talk about I May Destroy You.
Yeah, we're going to begin with British multi hyphenate Michaela Coel, who wrote, directed, created, and stars in her return to television. It is a new 12-part, half-hour HBO series that takes on kind of the weighty notions of sexual consent in the present day,
Yep.
given how much the landscape of dating and relationships has changed due to the advent of social media. Titled "I May Destroy You." The series kind of alternates between broad stories about her and her sexually adventurous friends, and more individual and upsetting moments of persistent trauma.
Hmm.
There is nothing tidy about how this tale unfolds, but there is nothing tidy about its themes.
Yep.
The series doesn't offer any pet, compact answers to the big questions it raises, but it is challenging and not always easy to watch, but will surely spark many thoughtful conversations on the subject matter it candidly explores, like in a very non-judgmental way.
Hmm.
At the center of the show is Arabella, played by Michaela Coel, basically a loose proxy of her in real life.
Yep.
In the fictional version, she stars as a best-selling author of a book about her millennial experiences
Hmm.
called Chronicles of a Fed Up Millennial, which is essentially a series of tweets just kind of cobbled together. Now she's writing a more traditional second novel and struggling to create captivating characters and stories that are
Hmm.
not 280-word Twitter posts, I guess. But she's young and hip, and with an array of friends who are cool, and she's the personification of the intense, hyper conscious millennial out there. As the story opens, she is unfortunately date raped in a club. Or
Hmm.
in a bar, or in a public bathroom stall. She's not sure. Her memory of it is hazy. At first, she isn't even sure that she is raped, or it was just like a hallucination when she was high.
Yeah.
And the story kind of unravels from there, of her trying to grapple with the implications of her boundaries being violated, as well as crossing into stories with her friends. Where uh, each of them in different ways and in very blurry ways have their boundaries violated or violate other people's boundaries. So
Hmm.
it's essentially a story about consent, the gray area that defines it.
Yep.
The with Michaela Coel or Arabella's situation is very clear cut, but not all situations are that clear cut. And it delves into that while looking at kind of both sides of the equation,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what I really loved about I May Destroy You throughout its 12 episodes. You've only caught the first quarter of it, 4 episodes, which is more than enough to give a review on. What do you think about it, Isa?
I do like the way that it goes about. I mean, it can get kind of messy, right? But then again, humans are messy. So it has a very compelling um rhythm to the way that it's being told, right? And it does kind of like span. There are a lot of kind of flashbacks and cut forwards, a lot of like things that they have to kind of cut to in order to give you a semblance of background about what's going on and how everything plays out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Arabella spent some time in Italy on her agent's dime,
Yep.
with her best friend Terry, who is also a big part of the show,
Yeah.
and we kind of like jump into that. I think like just before I ended off the last episode or the episode last episode I watched episode 4, we were
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like diving into that and um being kind of like a visitor to a different country and what is considered normal kind of like social or sexual behavior there is understood and challenged and so on and so forth. All in all, I mean, like, I like the way it's shot. It's some pretty dope
Mm-hmm.
music as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've kind of gotten to the meat of the story yet. Like, it feels like it's still building up to that. I'm guessing it's probably in the second third or the second act or the third act.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, so at this point in time where I'm at the story, I am intrigued by the the way in which Arabella is trying to navigate her trauma, which at this point is still unnamed
Mm-hmm.
and undefined, right? But the trauma is evident, even as she.
She's in the denial stage, lah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And even like for her, just being understand as a writer, the way that she speaks about her trauma is very telling. I
Mm.
think like the way that she wants to define it, as whether it's fact or whether it's something of her imagination. Like she works through that via the things that she says and the way that she tells that particular story, and the
Mm-hmm.
friends whom she tells it to.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, if somewhat loose, study of like how language forms our ideas,
Mm.
um, or how it shapes kind of like our perception on our trauma and how it ultimately affects us. I was
Yeah.
kind. Yeah.
Also the stories you tell yourself, like her being a writer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see because at this point in time, when the story begins, she's struggling to write her second book, right? And that writer's block doesn't only is not only restricted to the book itself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's as it coincides with her trauma or what happened to her specifically.
Yeah.
It also dovetails into her inability to tell her own story to herself
Mm-hmm.
and to the people
Mm-hmm.
around her. And for the last 4 episodes, I mean, this first 4 episodes that I've watched, she's struggling to kind of do that, and it feels familiar, right? To anybody
Mm.
who has tried to write anything, like how do you kind of capture human emotions into language, and especially something that is as difficult and as painful and sometimes as messy as a trauma like what Arabella has been through.
Definitely, the simple tagline premise, a young writer is a victim of rape is maybe not what you expect to be at the center of of a comedy,
Yep.
even a dark comedy, But I made a story. Its strength kind of lies in how unflinching it is in staring directly at Arabella's trauma and trying to process it while
Yep.
allowing just enough humor around the edges to keep it from being too pitch black.
Hmm.
It is a show that is ignited by sexual assault, but rather than rape, is more of a show about survival and all the ways we find to withstand even the most mundane violations of our consent.
Yep. Yep.
Like every episode, like as I mentioned, kind of features someone's consent being violated. Like for example, a gray area is in I think you might have seen the sojourn to Italy
Mm.
where Terry has what she assumes to be a threesome
Yeah.
with two strangers. It is obvious by the end of the episode that two strangers are not strangers,
Yeah.
and it's kind of an act that they play. So it's that a violation of a consent because she didn't know what was up. In an upcoming episode which you haven't seen yet, minor spoiler alert, one of their friends is a gay black man.
Hmm. Hmm.
He has basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to play the field and trying to see what it's like to be straight or
Yeah.
to be bisexual.
Hmm.
So he has sex with a straight woman, just as an experiment, like, what's it like to be straight. The woman feels very violated by this because she didn't know that he was gay, and she never consented to having sex with someone who's gay,
Yeah.
and that's a bit of a gray area also. What is sexuality, what is consent in that form. Are you required to tell someone that of your sexual orientation and things like that? It's very interesting also, and it kind of delves into Arabella as a social media star, if you didn't know.
Yeah.
She has a huge online presence. The show intriguingly also tackles later on about how Arabella first becomes a champion, for sexual assault survivors,
Uh-huh.
being ambassador or spokeswoman or supportive of causes such as that. But later on, it kind of dovetails a little bit into her exploiting her own trauma for gain.
Hmm.
Which is something that it's very brave of her to do because that could be something that an accusation that is leveled at the show's creator Michaela Coel,
Yep.
who might be said to be exploiting her own trauma to make the show.
Hmm.
So I'm glad that it's addressed in show,
Yeah.
in canon, and it's all very interesting and very deep and very layered and very messy. How Arabella reacts to certain things, you feel for her, but at the same time also, as she is trying to process and struggle and deal, she also is kind of ignoring the needs of her friends,
Hmm.
ignoring the emotional ones, unaware that some of her friends are going through the same things that she is,
Yeah.
but she's too kind of caught up in her own ocean of rage and sorrow, that she doesn't spare anyone a moment's notice, and becomes very difficult to deal with, like even the people who are most supportive to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm. How do you feel? Yeah. So I mean, like now that you've kind of finished it, how do you feel like the entire thing pans out as a story, right? Being told from with one degree of separation from Arabella.
It's really good because not all the episodes are Arabella centric.
Hmm.
Some episodes are Terry centric. Some episodes, it goes around the entire ensemble.
Yeah.
Some episodes even flash back to her secondary school life,
Oh. Okay.
which is interesting because her current she attends a sexual assault support group,
Hmm.
and the leader of the group, or the head of the group, was a secondary school friend, which is interesting because it flashes back to why she was cautious about becoming coming to this group, because the secondary school friend actually accused a black boy of rape. She's white, lah,
Yeah.
accused a black boy of rape in secondary school, which never happened. She made it up, and Arabella and her black friends were kind of key to exposing that deception.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting on that flip side as well. Very cool. And it kind of all wraps up with Arabella's uh, attempt to tell her story in
Yeah.
the form of a second novel,
Hmm.
and how difficult it is. The finale, in my opinion, one of the most perfect finales of this season, which makes it one of the more perfect shows of this season. This is my number one show of the year. If to give a spoiler for my eventual, top 50 shows or article,
Yeah.
but this is my number one show of the year primarily because of its finale, where Arabella is writing her book, and it dramatizes her writing three different endings for the book,
Yeah.
and three different endings for the show, consequently. One ending offers revenge, one ending offers catharsis, and one ending offers her to move on.
Hmm.
And it's up to you to decide, what is the better ending.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It,
mean, to be honest, I did take a peek at what the last episode would be like.
mhm.
Just I just wanted to have an idea, right, of like the entire drift, but I'm definitely gonna go finish off everything else. Um, once we're done with this, for sure. Yeah. So, in your opinion, in your personal opinion, which of the
Yeah.
three endings work the best for the
Um,
series?
Not to give a spoiler, but the end of the show sort of disregards all three endings.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the end of the show disregards all three endings by saying that she needs to move on.
Hmm.
She needs to accept what has happened and not hope for justice or revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the real ending. So, in essence, I know I said it offers three endings, but there are actually four endings in the show.
Right. Okay. So at the end of her exploring the three endings, the series itself wraps up on its own.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you delve into the first ending at first, and you think that's the real ending, and then it cuts back to her writing, and then you get to the second ending, and the third ending is a bit more abstract.
Hmm.
And then the fourth ending is her throwing away all three endings.
Fascinating. Okay. Okay. I'm excited to finish this up for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Minus spoilers for all of you, lah, but it actually, the impact I'm describing cannot be observed unless you actually see it play out. So I can give you the broad strokes of what happens at the end, but it really isn't as powerful as you yourself watching it, lah. So it's not much of a spoiler.
Hmm.
And it of course you won't understand the emotional resonance without context. And I made a story is in all what's great about it is in all the small details, it's moving, and despite the subject matter, it's at times very very funny. It should inspire plenty of conversation about very sensitive subject matters,
Yeah.
with increasing complexity, and it marks a bold new territory for Michaela Coel, who is operating at an unmatched level here as a writer, creator, and a star. I don't think the show would work as well
Mhm.
without her expressiveness and the sense of authenticity that she brings to the role.
Did she direct as well?
She directed about 3 to 4 episodes of it, more towards the end of it.
Okay, okay.
She wrote or co-wrote every episode, and obviously she stars in every episode too.
Damn, that's triple bill right there.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, it's key to not strike a false note with a show this sensitive. So
I agree.
yeah, so it's probably important that Michaela Coel be the one, because she has experienced this, and uh she knows what is false and what is not, and how to properly navigate a narrative such as this without it being exploitative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I totally agree.
yeah, fascinating dark TV. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah. Again, I think I said this for the fourth time now, but I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to finishing. I May Destroy You. I, I,
Mm-hmm.
I do have. I have a growing appreciation for TV that does not shy away from difficult content, the subject
Mm.
matters, and I think we've explored a fair number of those, especially this year.
Yes. Yeah.
And to be able to tell it in a way that feels entirely human. I mean, like, it's not the best kind of pacing, it's not necessarily the best kind of structure or rhythm going forward, but I mean, like, sometimes that's the way it is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to have to feel like that kind of echoes real human experiences really
Mm-hmm.
does make this a very compelling watch, even though I'm only a third of the way through.
Mm.
It's really, really good. I can see why. I can see why this would be your number one show of the year,
Mm.
and I want to see if it ranks up with the best that I've seen this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is almost similar to my last year's number one show. Well, there were two number ones, but one of them was Fleabag.
Yeah.
And interestingly, to kind of touch upon your point about shows like this,
Hmm.
don't you think it's weird that the shows that are kind of delving into very difficult subject matter with humanity and complexity and the messiness of it all are half-hour dramedies?
It is okay. So I was thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
How it What is it about the half-hour dramedies exactly? Is it the time that you're allowed to tell the story in? It's like 30 minutes, an effective amount of time for you to get into the ins and outs of an episode. You know,
Mm.
because not every 30 minute dramedy that we've watched necessarily covers an entire arc per se in one,
Mm.
or even like a one story in one, right? Like, I mean, there are a variety of reasons why these things could be played out this way, like
Yeah.
much like anime, right? They've got 20 minutes,
Mm.
they can wrap up a filler episode in 20 minutes, or it could have one basketball match over like 10 episodes, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is exactly, but it
Yeah.
does give enough time, I think, to get to the point of that
Mm.
particular episode. And then you have a series of making those points, across however long the season is.
Mm.
As opposed to, okay, so for example, we're gonna be talking about small acts, right? And that's
Mm.
like the two that I watched were 2 hours long each, or if not more, and
Mm-hmm.
that did feel over long. I think I would have preferred it if it was structured a bit differently. Again, nobody really knows what to bill it as.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but personally, like, there's something very apt about the timing around 30 minutes of to tell a story.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I guess part of it also the creators of these half-hour dramedies
Yeah.
who take a lot of themselves into it. From
Hmm.
I guess Aziz Ansari's Master of None, and
Yeah.
Donald Glover's Atlanta, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Fleabag, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? Like it's kind of the mold for these type of shows.
Hmm.
It's very interesting, and also the use of humor, I guess, sort of allows it to be more palatable when it's talking about the more difficult things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but I mean, like, overall, yeah, Michaela Coel's depiction of her personal torment here is a transfixing screen presence, and her visual, kind of the series' freewheeling kinetic visual style
Yeah.
makes it impossible to look away, alongside a great soundtrack. Not an easily classifiable series,
No.
but hard to pin down. But in the end, it is an enjoyable watch, and one of my favorites of the
Yeah,
year lah.
yeah. To be
Uh,
clear, it's not a comfortable watch, right?
Yeah,
but definitely compelling.
definitely. And similarly, another one of my favorite shows of the year, if you can call it a show, is a five-part anthology called Small Axe, written and directed by filmmaker Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen and Amazon Prime are billing it as an anthology of five different films. BBC, its primary home network, is billing it as a TV show. But whatever the case, it is a series lah.
Hmm.
It's a series of five different films. And what this is like, Small X is kind of a quote taken by Bob Marley lah.
Yeah.
If you are a big tree, we are the small X, and it covers the triumphs and struggles of London's, they call themselves the West Indian community,
Hmm.
because they come from the West Indies.
Yeah.
But West Indian, from like our point of view, we kind of think of west of India.
Yeah.
So like I'll refer to them as the Afro Caribbean community, like,
Hmm.
coming from the Caribbean islands.
Yep.
So of course, London has a huge Afro-Caribbean community, and Steve McQueen has taken several real-life stories. Some of these stories are based in real life and in fact, and some are more partly inspired by real-life events. But they're all about the different aspects, whether it's the joys, whether it's the struggles, whether it's the racism, the parties, the music of London's Afro-Caribbean community. And
Hmm.
each episode tackles a different aspect of it. Having seen the first two, what do you think about Steve McQueen's approach to Small Axe?
I've really enjoyed Mangrove and Lovers Rock, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in particular Mangrove for me. Was
For those not familiar, maybe give a small breakdown of what Mangrove and Lebes Rock is.
Okay, so Lovers Rock is Lovers Rock is a
Lebes.
story about a house party, right? So where
Mhm,
people kind of go to listen to kind of blues music and all of that, and it's essentially a haven for people who have been for black people who have been denied access into nightclubs,
mm,
right? Lovers Rock is, I guess you can call it kind of a slice of life, right? Because nothing really happens per se,
yeah.
but it covers like the whole host of things that could happen at a party like this, right? So people get together, there's
Mm,
alcohol, there's dancing, there's love, there's chaos,
mm.
there's mess, and all of those things kind of happening simultaneously at the same time in this place.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That is episode two for you who don't know. Lovers Rock is basically just an immersion, a
yep,
very freewheeling immersion into a reggae house party, an all-night reggae house party. It's
yep,
boozy, magical, joyous, occasionally chaotic, occasionally frenzied. And the first episode is called Mangrove, and we'll be talking more about the first two episodes here, like, because Isa hasn't seen the last three, which are
yep.
all equally good. Mangrove recounts the true story of Frank Critchlow,
Hmm.
who is played by Sean Parks here, who was the proprietor of Notting Hill's Mangrove Restaurant, which was
Mm.
targeted by racist police in London. Lah. Under the authorities, I guess, constant pressure of a Caribbean restaurant, who are not doing anything wrong, by the way. They're just serving Caribbean food,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a meeting place for Black intellectuals or Black activists to meet there. Lah. And because of the constant harassment, a resistance movement is born, and Mangrove kind of becomes a hub for activism, which on the flip side makes it even more of a target for the police.
Yep.
And the second half of the film transforms from an immersion into the community around this Caribbean restaurant into a legal drama,
Hmm.
as Frank Critchlow and his associates take on the corrupt police after they were arrested during a protest.
Yep.
Basically, they were protesting the police's harassment. They were beaten up, and then they were charged with instigation to riot,
Yep.
which is kind of a very similar premise to the trial of the Chicago Seven,
Hmm.
which is on Netflix right now by Aaron Sorkin. But this is, I guess you could say, the trial of the Mangrove Nine.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. That was our little synopsis. Go ahead with what you were saying.
Yeah. So I really, really enjoyed Mangrove for sure. Right. Like Lovers Rock was great, but just how, again, like as you said, how freewheeling it was. It's a very different kind of movie, I think, than you're expecting. And given that I watched Mangrove first with
Mm,
kind of like very, very strong narrative structure,
mm,
especially when we go into the second half and the whole legal drama that goes along with that,
yep.
it's so reminiscent of so many great kind of like legal films. Uh, a-
Courtroom dramas, right?
Courtroom
Yeah.
dramas, yeah, and especially since we just kind of revisited 12 Angry Men,
Yeah.
I really dig that and the way that they went about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, um, Lovers Rock, on the other hand, was just a bit of a shock. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like, going into that, because I wasn't really sure where we were going. We
Mm-hmm.
could kind of bounce from click to click and from person to person, and just like changing different points of view within the party itself, and what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it is refreshing to see that, for sure.
All
Um,
five films have a very different tonal style to
ah,
give a little to show that the Afro Caribbean community is not a monolith. Like it's
yep,
not always police discrimination. It's
yep.
not always reggae house parties. There are different sides to it, like, and different sides to the experiences that they have.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, watching Lovers Rock felt like I was at a party, which it's been a while, right? For
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of us.
It's good COVID watch actually.
Yeah, and it was extremely cathartic to be a part of that as an
Mm-hmm.
audience. I think like Steve McQueen did a great job with just capturing that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I it was I obviously it was shot that way, purposefully, right? But like, I'm not sure how it's gonna how whether or not the intention to speak to people who haven't been able to mingle in a setting like that,
Mm-hmm.
um was intentional.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously this was filmed way before COVID, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, both very different stories, I think. Um but both extremely enjoyable. I'm looking forward to watching the other
The next three.
three. Yeah, so
Yeah.
what we had I the third one is out already, right? Or
Yes,
all
correct. It's
all of
called
them out?
no, the third one is just released this week.
Yeah.
It is called Red, White, and Blue, and it returns back to the realm of a non-fiction or a biopic.
Mm-hmm.
It is about a metropolitan police officer named Leroy Logan, who
Yeah.
is wonderfully played by John Boyega. Fantastic performance.
Mm.
It's one of those performances that makes you wonder, how Star Wars wasted him, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Red, White, and Blue is about Logan, who is a research scientist who
Mm-hmm.
decides who inspired his father is actually beaten up by the police during a routine search and stop.
Yeah.
But rather than becoming anti-police, Logan is galvanized to join the police force in an attempt to change it from the inside, give the police force a different perspective. Maybe having a black man in the police force would lessen this type of racial discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to change the beast from the inside, lah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As you can probably tell, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
Yeah, change is a slow moving wheel, and Logan finds that out firsthand because him joining the police force estranges himself from his parents, estranges himself from his community. His friends no longer talk to him. The people within the police force themselves regard him as an outsider and refuse to take him as one of their own. It's a very difficult thing for Logan to navigate despite his very noble intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Very good,
Mm-hmm.
and the next episode, called Alex Wheatle, episode 4, is I haven't seen it,
Yeah.
but it's about it's a real life tale also, and again nonfiction. Alex Vito was a person who spent his childhood in a predominantly white institutional care home with no love or family. But we see him finally gain a sense of community for the first time in Brixton,
Yeah.
where he develops a passion for music and DJing. So things take a turn later on when the infamous Brixton riots of 1981 sees Vito imprisoned,
Mm-hmm.
leading him on a difficult journey to confront his past. That is episode 4. Episode 5 is called Education,
Mm-hmm.
which follows a 12-year-old boy named Kingsley, who has a budding passion for astronauts and rockets. But he is dubbed disruptive by his teachers, so he's moved to a school for students with special education needs.
Yeah.
Students with developmental difficulties. He is not developmentally difficult. He's just a normal young boy who's curious, but he is not the complacent, lazy black boy that everyone wants him to be, lah,
Mm-hmm.
or as the stereotype. So Kingsley's parents work two jobs and are unaware that the move symbolizes a type of educational segregation,
Yeah.
until a group of Caribbean women decide to do something about it. So they're all
Mm.
very different. But yeah, Mangrove, the first episode, a tour de force courtroom drama, man.
Mm-hmm.
So many impassioned moments, from the protests to the ensuing riots to the actual courtroom drama itself,
Yeah.
and upon watching the trial of the Chicago Seven, I was almost a bit taken aback to see a fair judge. you know,
Well, I mean, yeah, yeah.
well,
Well, let's not.
a lot fairer than in the trial of
That
Chicago
is true.
Seven. I
That
hope.
is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, it was funny. We do have Letitia Wright, playing a role
Also in it.
as a Black Panther, as the
Yeah,
British
interesting.
Black Panther. And I
Yeah.
was, yeah, when I saw her there and she started talking about Black Panthers, I was like, yeah,
Mm.
we all know where this is going. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. My favorite of the bunch though still remains Lovers Rock, which is
Mm.
just such a great snapshot into a 1980s reggae party that
Yep.
is just loaded with a soundtrack from reggae hits of old.
Hmm.
It's kind of a paean or a homage to an energized youth culture
Yeah.
taking control of its surroundings despite the social unrest around them lah. Kind of experiences it in its own terms. It is a delightful snapshot
Hmm.
of boozy dance floor seduction
Yeah.
that plays like an artist unleashing years of repressed good vibes, and applying a lyrical style to pure unbridled bliss for the entirety of its 68 minutes, lah, with the exceptions of certain moments of chaos.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's great because I feel that I used to cover music, and I used to go to a lot of parties, like, and I have a lot of respect for the different traditions,
Yeah.
from like German techno and different types of things, but Lovers Rock to me feels like the most authentic depiction of a party that I've ever seen on screen, at
Hmm.
least from my experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
The dance floor sing-alongs, the romantic hookups, the one guy who kills the vibe because he can't leave his personal issues at home, the toilet queue. There's always that one asshole looking to take advantage of girls. The primal escalation of the on the dance floor
Yeah.
during peak time. The aggressive request for a rewind in front of the DJ booth. Getting your beer stolen, getting pissed at your friend for ditching you because they met someone else.
Yeah.
Catching the first bus home. It was so relatable to me because I grew up in the tradition of the I guess the successor genres,
Yeah.
jungle, drum and bass, grime, dubstep, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But obviously those genres were rooted in reggae and dub parties such as this lah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I found I felt like the roots of the party tradition that I feel most at home with.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally, man.
I mean, there are a couple of dance floor scenes here that are just so rivetingly filmed, in non-narrative ways.
Yeah.
There is no story to a couple of very long scenes here. I mean, first of all is the sing along to Silly Games, which is so enthralling.
Hmm.
And then the second part is the peak time freak out to Kunta Kinte dub. Alongside with, like, I have been part of like one of those like very aggressive people in front of the booth, like just like demanding a rewind, and watching that was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the rewind sparks and even more joyous frenzied dance floor breakdown. It's amazing lah. It's you these are the moments of joy, I guess, that you see in the Black British community
Hmm. Hmm.
that white people don't know about or don't see lah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. I really. Yeah. It really did elicit. I do miss kind of being at parties like that. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Good Times. I just reminded me of Good Times. Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this is really great stories about community, one specific community, and about how all the small pockets of sub communities in there, how they function, what
Yeah.
the ecosystem is like, and how they support one another.
Hmm.
These communities, they're built through food, through organizing parties,
Yeah.
through protest. They're sustained with music and dance and culture, and small acts, like as I mentioned, like it takes this line from a famous Bob Marley quote, and what Steve McQueen is trying to say is that people push back against the institutional forces that keep them
Uh
oppressed,
huh.
sometimes through protest, and sometimes through parties, and sometimes in many other ways.
Yeah.
And through these series of stories, we see the small acts do its work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm constantly reminded as I'm watching this at and Malachi Kirby, who plays Darkus Howe in Mangrove, and his impassioned speech at the end of it, right, where he talks about,
Yeah.
communities will create the institutions that they need, and those institutions will continue to serve their needs.
Mm.
And like it really is, I think it's the core of what the idea behind Small X is about, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the story surrounding these communities creating these institutions for themselves. And it is, I mean, like on top of like how culturally important and significant these stories are to to the Afro Caribbean community, like
Mm-hmm.
it is a joy to watch just because of like some great performances, some fantastic cinematography, and for
Mm-hmm.
lovers rock in particular, the music is just dope, right? It's just so dope. So
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the next three movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how totally different they can be. Really.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like episode three, which we haven't seen, Red, White, and Blue, is basically John Boyega's journey in the police force. Though it's
Mm, mm,
very interesting and opens up a whole different set of issues within the Black British community that are not explored in the first two
mm-hmm.
episodes. Fantastic stuff, man. Really loved it. But let's move on to your side of the corner where you've picked exclusively online serialized things,
Yep.
which is very cool. I mean, who's to say, stuff on YouTube or Dropout TV is any less valid of a TV show than something that is on Netflix or Hulu? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, like we did have this discussion, right? Like as I was deciding what to do.
Yep.
Um, in looking at the things that we have watched this year, other than the stuff that we cover for genre, other than the stuff that we cover for Behold, what have I spent most of my time watching? Sure, there's a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of Netflix there and a whole lot of anime, but outside of
Mm.
that, what have I been watching? What have I been spending my time doing? And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, it's been, I think I've spent the most time watching maker videos, of which Adam Savage tested is a big part of
Yeah.
that. And I've been watching people play D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so which why it's why I thought it would be best, since we are doing recommendations, to kind of like recommend the YouTube channel that I basically watched all their videos since quarantine started, more or less, right? And then I just kind of revisiting the idea that gameplay TV is now a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a growing thing, and it's a thing I think a lot of people are going to enjoy, even though they don't know about it yet.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's jump into test it for a bit. So, um,
Definitely. Hosted by Mythbusters legend Adam Savage.
yeah. So I mean, for those of you that don't know, Adam Savage is a special effects designer and fabricator by trade.
Mm-hmm.
He's also an actor, an educator, television personality. But by and large, what he's known for being is a creator, right? As a maker, to be specific,
Mm.
And he has, done everything from Mythbusters and later on Savage Bills, which he hosts on his own.
Yep.
And he's also worked on with ILM to do some of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Um, so the man has a huge, huge list of accolades just going about. But I think for me, the biggest draw, I've been watching the channel for a while now, just being a big fan and the way that he does things and being interested in maker culture in general.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little there. Just him being able to come up with an idea and to have the knowledge and the tools available for him to kind of problem solve and get to the end point. To him being at Comic Con and cosplaying as Chewbacca or whatever the new costume is, right? Like it's nerdy to a fault, and
Yep.
that's really appealed to me. But I think the main reason for my recommendation for Adam Savage's Tested was when we went into lockdown earlier this year in March, right? So Tested is it's not just Adam Savage. Of course, there's a bunch of people like Norm and all of that who support him in different ways, and they host kind of different parts of the website as well as for the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
But because everybody went into lockdown where they were in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, a lot of the videos had to change the way in which they either interacted with people or just the format in which they were filmed. And I think Adam Savage found himself in a place where like he didn't have the support of a camera crew to tell the
Yeah.
stories that he wanted to tell. So
Yeah.
in particular, I think the one day builds, which
Mm.
basically he has an idea or a problem that he's trying to solve, and he has a day,
To do it,
a
yeah.
metaphorical day, right? Because it's not
Mm-hmm.
always it doesn't always happen 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Those took on a very different tone. And I think they became extremely relatable because he's not just talking about the thing at hand that he's trying to do, right? And of course, accompanied by all the B-roll and there's the sounds from the shop and all of that. It becomes an extremely personal look at a man who's trying to cope with the fact
Mm.
that he doesn't have access to the greater community in person anymore, right? And he's in his workshop, which has become his safe space,
Mm.
or as he calls it, his cave, to just kind of like figure out where he is right now at this point in time in his life and in the world in general as we go through this pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as he works with his hands, he works through all of that at the same time. And it has been deeply kind of inspirational to
Mm-hmm.
follow that journey of a extremely creative and talented man who turns to his strengths
Mm-hmm.
and faces his weaknesses as a maker, to
Mm.
grow in a time where people feel stagnant,
Yeah.
right? And that has been the main kind of like compulsion for me to continue watching what Adam Savage is doing over at Tested, because so many of those things before the pandemic has appealed to me, but like I've been using it as a way to cope, right?
Mm-hmm.
With just the general feeling of not being able to create as freely as I had once wanted to, during the
Mm.
pandemic, with all the kind of like emotional upheaval that goes with there and the boredom and all of that
Mm.
that comes with that. So yeah, so if you excuse me, if you are interested in how things are made and the wide realm of possibilities that you could take a piece of wood or a piece of metal or model kits and cosplay and all of that, if you have any kind of like interest in that, I highly recommend you check out Adam Savage's Tested. It's a
Yeah.
YouTube channel. They've got a huge following of people who are like-minded and always they're just constantly keen on helping each other out and offering information and the best way to do things. I don't have, any of those skills. I don't have a workshop. I don't do wood working, or I don't have a lathe and do metalworking or anything of the sort, even though I've been interested in the craft. But
Mm-hmm.
it is extremely therapeutic and relaxing to watch someone do that. I mean, there has to be a reason why these videos do so well on YouTube, right? Like they get millions of
Mm.
views, and it's just a guy, trying to make a cup out of a piece of wood, right? And
Yeah.
it's just to a very simple music track. I think the main kind of like uniqueness that comes with watching Adam Savage do it is this amazing commentary, the
Mm.
stream of consciousness commentary that goes on as he's doing that, and
Mm.
he's trying to educate, he's trying to walk you through the steps. He understands that not everybody watching the channel immediately gets what he's doing, but at the same time, there are these amazing kind of um stories that he has from years and years of just working with amazing people and on amazing projects, and his quips and his little philosophies that he either subscribes to or he comes up by himself, all around, like that really kind of shines through as a man who set up a camera in his workshop to make videos and tell stories, right? And
Yeah.
as someone who aspires to tell great stories, like it is intensely inspiring, and intensely helpful. It's been incredibly helpful,
Mm.
throughout the year.
Definitely, if you know anything about Adam Savage from Mythbusters, you know what he's like. He's energetic
Yep.
and he's exuberant, and kind of the perfect frontman for a show such as this, which could, in another person's hands, be kind of dry or be kind of
Mm,
technical. Adam Savage is the perfect guy for it because his enthusiasm and his love of pop culture really crosses several barriers.
yep.
And the thing about Tested, it's a bit similar to Mythbusters in a sense because it is an intersection of science and popular
Yep.
culture and technology and engineering. So he kind of takes viewers behind the scenes of whether you're crafting something or behind the scenes of your favorite films or TV shows or theaters and museums, things like that. And it shines a spotlight on the craft
Hmm.
and the crafts people,
Yes.
and who make the magic we all enjoy. So whether he's building a baby Yoda or Captain American shield, it's something like that fanciful or genre centric, or
Yep.
whether he's just making something more practical. It's a good look into how engineering and science, or a good way to expose people to the engineering principles and scientific principles behind these things, and kind of Trojan horse it in a
Hmm.
way,
Hmm.
to educate a more casual public.
Yep, for sure. Right. I mean, like, I I started out watching it just out of interest, and now I follow it just because, like, there's just so many things to learn that are
Mhm.
not just. I mean, everything you've mentioned you can learn from that, right?
Mhm.
But there's just so many kind of life lessons and life stories that you get from watching this, right? Hours and hours of people making things and like failing and trying again and learning from their mistakes. And uh yeah, all in all, like, I in hindsight, right, just looking at the amount of time that I've spent watching stuff untested, I understand why it is that, on a given Monday, right, tens and thousands of people are just tuning in to watch him assemble, the
Yeah,
Ghostbuster Ecto machine, the Ecto van, right? And it's
yeah,
because, like, there's something for us there to learn, right? And we are learning from someone who is very acutely human and is aware that he's very acutely human, but still desires to create and do his best at what he does.
yeah. Exactly. It's the perfect way to be productive
Hmm.
and not be, in times of isolation, or in times of struggle, whether it's internal or external or whatever.
Yep.
Adam Savage's Tested is a good benchmark for how you can turn all of that into something constructive. I mean, literally constructive.
Yeah.
It's what Adam does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so for any of you who are curious to kind of check it out, please go ahead to either tester.com, or you
Mhm.
can just Google Adam Savage's Tested and it'll bring you to the YouTube page.
Mhm.
There's kind of something for everyone if you're interested. They cover technology. They occasionally talk about movies and books. Actually, they talk about it. They have their own podcast where they kind of talk about movies and books
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well, right? If you're always just wondering, like, how people just make insane things, or like
Mhm.
how prop replicas are made, please go check them out. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, every season, Adam Savage seems to go hard on the expense whenever a new season comes out,
Mhm.
and the expense comes back in 2 weeks, so I'm eager to see his new series
Yeah, I mean, we
on the
can
expense.
let's go a bit on a tangent. So it's season 6. Uh,
No, season 5 is the next one. Season 6 will be the following and final
yeah,
season.
so the news just came out that it will be final season, and we won't be
Mm-hmm.
seeing
Cass, the Martian pilot, I forgot his
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
Cass Anvar, I think.
I'm really curious as to how they're gonna work him out of the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's probably just gonna get killed off, lah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we haven't had any of that yet, so
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it might add some stakes at the end of season 5. Maybe I don't know, but I trust the expense to do a good job with it.
Mm.
But if they don't, I do understand also lah, because it's outside circumstances that they couldn't control, and it forces them to modify a narrative they're in the middle of.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm gonna cut them some slack on this lah, if they don't do it well.
yeah. I mean, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I really don't think they will stumble too much.
The
Uh,
the bigger problem is not Cass Anvar. The biggest problem is season 6 has to cover 3 books.
yeah, and I don't think that's possible.
Yeah,
So,
I think they might pick an earlier book to end on.
hmm. So they're gonna shoehorn the ending in earlier in the narrative.
Yes, perhaps even disregard a book.
Interesting.
Maybe yeah.
Might be possible. I mean, I haven't read all the books, so I wouldn't know exactly how they would do it. But okay,
Mhm.
okay, we'll see, we'll see. I mean, they've done a great job so far. I don't want them or expect them to fail from here on in.
Definitely, like I highly doubt it's gonna be a Game of Thrones lah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on to Dropout TV's Dimension 20, which is a Dungeons and Dragons gameplay
Yep.
series that is hilarious, led by an actor named Brandon Lee Mulligan. It features a lot of professional gamers and comedians on the
Yep.
show as well, as they go on campaigns in Dungeons and Dragons. I have caught a few episodes from multiple of their campaigns,
Hmm.
so I'm a bit familiar with it. If you don't know, Dropout TV is a paid streaming service from College Humor, which began streaming Dimension 20 way back in 2018.
Yeah.
But strangely enough, they're now in, I think, the
Yeah.
sixth season.
Uh,
A lot for 2 years, huh?
it's pretty intense, right?
Yeah.
So to give you guys an idea, Dimension 20 started out as College Humor's in-house, like company D&D game, right? So that's
Mm,
how it's kind of started out. And after a while, when everybody got kind of the hang of it, they said, I mean, like, we've got content right here, right? Why don't we film it? So
yep.
again, Brennan Lee Mulligan, like one of the most amazing kind of voice actors and dungeon masters that I've seen, that I've met, and just the sheer amount of voice characters that he can do in a single session, not even a campaign, right? It's kind of mind
Yeah.
blowing, right? So it's been 2 years, and they've done multiple campaigns so far. So Fantasy High,
Mhm.
which is the one I think we'll be focusing on, already
The first one,
yeah, the first
yeah.
one has already had 2 seasons.
Yep.
And then they've done Unsleeping City, which is one about New York, which I really enjoyed. They did
Hmm.
a small kind of like side quest spin-off story where they've invited guests like Matthew Mercer, who's part of a big part of Critical Role, which is
Yes.
another gameplay channel, or gameplay series rather,
Hmm.
that has gone on for like, I think it's like 3 campaigns of like several, almost 1,000 episodes
Mm.
on their
Yeah.
side of things, where they basically they role play the villains instead of the heroes, which was incredibly fun to watch as well. But yeah, so I haven't really caught the latest two, the ones that started like slightly later this year.
Crown Candy.
Yeah, Crown Candy, I think I watched the first episode and then like that
Hmm.
was pretty much it. But I think Fantasy High is a very easy way to kind of get into it.
Hmm.
So for those, how do I? Is there a need to explain Dungeons and Dragons?
I mean, if you know Dungeons and Dragons, you know it. Like, if you don't, you know of it.
Yeah,
If you're not interested, you won't be listening. So no need, lah.
yeah, that's true. Okay, so
Yeah.
basically, Fantasy High is Dungeons and Dragons, high school drama, right? Like Mean Girls would be the right movie to kind of compare it to.
Yeah, high school
Yeah,
drama.
that's what it's
Yeah.
high school drama. Think
Yeah.
Riverdale. But Dungeons and Dragons with magic and monsters and all of that, and we
Hmm.
basically follow a group of ragtag adventurers, or wannabe adventurers who are part of a hero school or
Hmm.
adventurer school, and just kind of the trials and tribulations that they face during the course of their school year.
Yep.
Yeah, so it features a whole lot of people from College Humor. So you've got your Emily Axford who plays Fig, you've got Zach Oyama who plays Gorgug. You've got ooh, who else is there? There's Lou Wilson as well, who plays Fabian, and all of these characters are introduced to you in kind of the most innocuous way.
Hmm.
And because these guys are, professional actors and voice actors, they kind of go all in on the role playing and things like that. They are introduced to you in the first episode, and I think the first time I started watching them maybe while I was in Bali last year in October. That's kind of when I discovered it.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. But the characters really kind of grow on you, right? And at some point in time, you forget that this is a game of Dungeons and Dragons, and it turns out to
Hmm.
be an amazing collaborative storytelling session that is
Yeah.
entirely, well, for the most part, improvised,
Hmm.
right? Like you kind of forget the mechanics of it and all of that. Even though like someone rolling a natural 20 at a crux
Mm.
moment is one of the most like exhilarating things that I've seen, like
Yeah.
both like emotionally and on screen. Um, But yeah, so we follow them through their adventures, and all of that. I don't want to kind of like get into the story a bit too much because it becomes very spoilery very early on.
Hmm.
Just the kind of twists and turns that the story takes, because I mean,
It's
as yeah,
improvised.
it's
It's creative.
improvised.
Yeah.
And as a DM or a GM, like, you never have any control over what the players are gonna do, and
Hmm.
sometimes, no pun intended, you just gotta roll with it.
Yeah, yeah. Brendan, one of the best DMs in the world, lah,
Yep.
in my opinion. So hilarious and often captivating. I guess if anybody had any complaints about this show, it could be the people who are stickler for D&D
Oh yeah,
rules.
yeah.
May find the show's reliance on, I guess they call it the rule of cool, a bit too haphazard. But the result is so fun. Who cares, right?
Yeah, I think they realize at the end of the day that they want to make quality entertainment, right?
Hmm.
Because generally speaking, like, D&D has never been played to an audience for the longest time, right? It takes place in your house, around your kitchen table, in your basement, right? Or at least that's the idea that most people have had of what playing D&D is about, right? You get a glimpse of that in Stranger
Hmm.
Things when the boys are all kind of like gathered in the basement trying to play D&D. Uh,
Only with the advent of streaming, it's changed.
yeah, exactly, right. And now with the rise of podcasting as a staple form of consuming, audio material, of all sorts, right? And
Yeah.
now with streaming and with YouTube and all of that, like, the ability to play your character to an audience has, I think, frankly, changed the game,
Hmm.
right? And I think Fantasy High and what they're doing in Dimension 20, it's one of the more easy. It's definitely easier to access, right? Accessibility. It has a greater degree of accessibility than, say,
Yeah.
Critical Role, because Critical Role can be entertaining, no doubt, but it's a bit of a deeper dive into what
Mm-hmm.
D&D can actually be, because it's a bit more traditional that way.
Mm-hmm.
Dimension 20 has some very interesting settings that uh, are kind of unique in that respect. So, it's easy to kind of dive into, it's easy to enjoy, right? And like, it becomes this whole like kind of playground for these extremely talented actors and comedians to just kind of do whatever they want within the boundaries of the world that they've set.
Yeah.
And again, right, in speaking to how this why I've spent so much time on it, is the same kind of thing, right? We escape, into other worlds, whether it's into a book or into a movie or into games.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like, this has been another form of escape of traveling with, characters that we've made up, who we either aspire to be or have always been curious um, to play, into
Mm.
worlds that are fantastical and out of the ordinary, and so different from kind of like the rooms and our homes that we have been seconded in for a large part of the year.
Definitely, I mean, the advent of like easy streaming, the democratization of the internet. I mean, okay, like some things is bad,
Yeah.
let's look at politics these days.
Mm.
But for other things, it's really good, especially in times of COVID, where people still get to interact and socialize without leaving their house.
Yep.
Um, everything like from the genres that have cropped up. There's a lot of gameplay videos, of course, like from video games to board games
Yeah.
that are on Twitch and many other platforms, or reaction videos to TV shows and films. It's like being in a room with your friends,
Hmm.
watching a show or playing a game. And Dimension 20 is really fun to watch because it's clear how much the producers and cast love to make the show,
Yeah.
and how dedicated they are to their audience. It's just as dropout TV likes to say, like it's produced with love, right? It's their tagline.
Hmm.
And I really feel that. Fantasy High is really really fun. The one that I'm watching right now that really captured me is the Unsleeping City,
Oh my god. Yeah.
which is set in New York, primarily because it is set in New York. It's such a different setting
Yeah,
for Dungeons and Dragons, and because Brennan, I think he lives in New York, and you can clearly see that he knows and loves New York.
yeah,
And from the way he narrates the story, it feels very lived in, and all the shared anecdotes are unique because
yeah.
of that.
So,
Very cool, man.
yeah, so the story behind that is that I think for Unsleeping City,
Yeah,
80% of the guys at the table used to live in New York at one point
yeah.
in time in their lives, right? So they're extremely familiar with the place. A big shout out as well to the guys who designed the set. There are a couple of guys that they mentioned. I can't remember their names. Forgive me, but who designed the sets and the mini figurines
Mm-hmm.
that they use to play, because that is so much, that's a huge part of the entertainment value and the production value that we get from Fantasy High, because not all the D&D guys do that, right? Because it's a lot of work, just the way in which like they craft this insane like multi-level play areas for everyone, and everybody's got their own figurine, all the enemies have their own figurine and stuff like that. It's just like huge props to the guys who do that. It's kind of amazing and really does add to the overall experience as someone who's watching the game, because it's not just people sitting around the table talking about it. There's actually a visual element to it that is extremely compelling as well.
Yeah, yeah, Critical Role is also a D&D gameplay series, which I've not seen,
Yeah.
Well, what is that like?
Um. So Critical Role essentially is run by Matthew Mercer and gang. If you've watched the Dimension 20 side quest, the one Escape from Bloodkeep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Matthew Mercer is the guy in charge of Critical Role. And
Right.
he's also the guy who's been doing like these one-off charity Dungeons and Dragons campaigns with I think he did it with Terry Crews,
Mm.
Vin Diesel. I think they did it with a couple of other people as well, right? Where it was just literally, you people who celebrities who have been playing Dungeons and Dragons, or are totally kind of new to the game, they've been interested in it. Critical Role is, oh, I can't keep track. I'm actually several seasons behind
Oh, wow. Okay.
at this point in time, and every season is like a fair number of episodes. I think it's anywhere from like 30 to 40 episodes.
Very long
Yeah, very very
campaigns.
long campaigns.
Yeah, I think part of the thing that interested me in Dimension 20 is because it doesn't have that kind of a commitment
Yeah,
that you need to
yeah.
put into it.
I think in some of the interviews or behind the scenes, Brennan really does talk about the fact that it's different for them because there's a strict time limit for every session that they have. Right, they have to keep it 2 hours or thereabouts. Or else you're going to lose your audience, and it's extremely tiring in terms of the amount of prep that he needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and of course the constraints of being on a filming schedule in the midst of all the other stuff that they're doing in College Humor kind
Yeah.
of makes it difficult. So the format in which Dimension 20 stuff takes place really does help, right? Like you jump in, it's your first hour, you get invested, and from then on, every episode is going to be like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and it always proceeds apace. Um, which is kind of amazing, right? Given that it's all improvised, you always need to reach a point whereby people want to watch the next episode, and they always magically manage to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite crazy because they don't edit out that much, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's great because it brings as much heart as it does humor,
hmm
and the stories are always, as you say, compelling and very fast paced.
hmm
I think because of the tight arcs, right? The series showcases a lot of character and world building
yeah,
while bringing, I guess, new voices to the live play community, quote unquote.
hmm
I think this is one of like my favorite D&D gameplay shows that I've ever
yeah,
seen.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure, for sure. I mean, I always come back to this, and I
yeah.
mean, I've been. There's maybe we'll do an episode where we kind of talk about like all the guys who are kind of like doing great stuff in the world of D&D,
Mm.
streaming, and maybe one of these days we'll dive into that. But I want to recommend Dimension 20 as a very easy way to get into it. It's okay if you're listening to this and you have absolutely no idea what Dungeons and Dragons is about or how it's played, because there are
Mm-hmm.
people at the table, especially for Fantasy High, who have absolutely no idea. Like it is their
Mm.
first campaign, right? So they've always been interested, and now they've kind of committed to something like that. And you get to see them grow, not just as player characters, but you get to see them grow as, like D&D players as well, right? And the interesting, like fascinating choices that they make because they're unfamiliar with what the rules are supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and like just the way that Brennan has to kind of respond to that is all types of amazing, and it happens more often than you think.
Yeah.
um so yeah, highly recommend Dimension 20 and what they're doing. If you enjoy the stuff that they have on YouTube, which comes out, I think, 2 to 3 weeks after it comes out on Dropout.tv.
Yes.
By the way, Dropout.tv is not a very high subscription cost. I think it's like $7 or something like that a month.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to kind of watch it as it comes out, if you've caught up, it really, really helps. That's one. Number two is they also do stream on Twitch. Every once in a while, they will have live streams. So they have a
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy High Live, which is like a different season altogether.
Mm.
That they've been playing. So that
Nice.
one doesn't have as complex of a setup, a setup, as the
Mm-hmm.
rest of them. But like you can see entirely the dice rolling and all of that going on. If you're curious about how a real Dungeons and Dragons game will work out, that's not necessarily, fully produced.
Oh yeah, yeah, I mean, because it's live,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You have to be a bit more flexible with that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, great stuff. Do follow Dimension 20 on Dropout.tv or College Humor or their YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
which is they air episodes at a delayed pace, but still worth the effort.
Yep,
If you can't afford to subscribe to Dropout.tv, go watch it on YouTube.
yep.
It's right there for free.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can, support Dropout, because like you said, the subscriber base is a bit low,
Yeah.
but it's great because I noticed that there are no ads
Nope.
involved. Nothing shady. It's just a great fun streaming service.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, it. Yeah, everything that College Humor does is up there, right? If any of those have tickled your fancy, whether you've come across them on your Facebook's feed or on YouTube, please go check that out. I mean, there's so much good stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
But largely, I mean, I've just spent a lot of time watching Dimension 20 stuff, including that the
Definitely.
interviews, which
Mm-hmm.
is fascinating, the post-show talks, where it's kind of crazy, right? Like we've always seen only the big TV series get their post-show talks, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whether we're talking about Stranger Things, whether we're talking about
Walking Dead
Walking
and
Dead
things
and
like
all
that.
of that. But it's
Yeah.
so fascinating to be able to see that happen for a gameplay series like this, right? Where they can
Mm-hmm.
tell you, the players themselves can tell you exactly what it is they were thinking at a given point in time and explain their rationale as they build their character on the fly,
Mm-hmm.
right? That to me is kind of the height of improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane, right? How good they are at that and how effortless they make it seem, you know.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, one part that I mentioned 20 that attracted me is it felt very similar to pro wrestling to me.
Yeah, yeah.
In a lot of ways, pro wrestling itself, has the behind the scenes interviews and stuff like that about the people behind the characters, why they made the improv decisions they did at the time,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're responding to a crowd
Mm-hmm.
or they're just playing off the other character. Like, this is pro wrestling for nerds, I guess.
Damn right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yes, the second thing of the year that I'm gonna recommend that I've spent a ton of time just kind of escaping to is, well, Dimension 20's Fantasy High and all the other related stuff. Do check them
Yeah.
out. Again, you can catch Fantasy High's season 1 and 2 on YouTube already. The
Mhm.
small side quest where their guests play villains is called Escape from Bloodkeep. That's also up. I believe most of Unsleeping City is also up,
I think it is. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would suggest, if you're new to all this, please jump into Fantasy High. And if you're short of time, you can always do Escape from Bloodkeep. They have slightly more experienced players there. Um, in fact, almost everybody at the table from for Escape on Bloodkeep is a dungeon master in their own right, on their own
Mm.
channels as well. So that's going to be kind of fascinating for people who are a bit more into the whole thing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're looking for an interesting kind of a different medium of fantasy story, I think this would be for you.
Yeah, and as we've mentioned, Adam Savage is tested also on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Baxter's channel. Just type in "tested" and you'll find it.
Yep.
Um, Small X available on BBC One, or if you're overseas, you can buy. You can get it on BBC iPlayer
Mm-hmm.
or Amazon Prime, which I think is available in most territories.
Yeah.
I May Destroy You is available on HBO, HBO Go, HBO Max, all the various HBO streaming services, of which there are too many of, alongside BBC iPlayer as well, because keep in mind it is a BBC show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those were our favorite serialized things of the year, or screen series of the year,
Yeah.
things that you can watch. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time to talk about, I guess, our favorite films of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I have picked mine out,
I'm
and for
struggling.
I
I'm struggling.
and for Isa, I've made it a bit broader. He can pick not just films, but anything he wants,
Yeah.
like from books to albums to artwork or whatever lah. Like literally, is open for you to select anything that you want,
Yeah. So I
or even returning enemies, if you wanted to also.
yeah. So I will be yeah. I haven't made my choice yet. It's a bit tough. I'm not as disciplined as Hits when it comes to making lists like that.
Mm,
Yeah. But I guess you guys will find out when you tune in.
definitely, man. Till next time, this has been Hitzer.
I'm Isa.
And remember to catch out our latest episode of Genre Equality, which is out right now
Mm-hmm.
on the Genre Equality channel. Goodbye, guys.
Ciao.